helped me see how people of the past lived their lives.
I think it was really interesting to learn and discover through this project how resilient and persevering these women were.
I was able to figure more stuff about how young the women were and just their conditions back then, which made the project so much more real.
Stitched Together began as an outgrowth of our research into sewing in Kingston, which is the name of an exhibition that we're going to exhibit in the Reher Center gallery that tells the stories of the city's garment workers, past and present. We had planned to open this exhibition in spring 2020, but when the COVID-19 delays set in, it was clear that we had an opportunity to expand our research. And so what we did was, we looked at the earlier era. We said in the later era, we have amazing oral history interviews, stories of real people who bring this history of the garment industry to life. But in the earlier era, we just have photographs, rows of white women sitting at identical sewing machines sewing garments. Who were they? What were their stories? That was where we had the idea to work with students to create something collaborative and meaningful during this most challenging of school years that would also contribute to our larger story of sewing in Kingston.
I think one of the key takeaways that I learned that I didn't totally know is that some of these women that worked in these factories had families, and they provided a lot of financial support to their families.
This project has really helped me understand the important role that women seamstresses have played in the local garment industry. I personally have always really admired women of this time period, specifically working women, because they had brought on something that had never been tried before, and it took incredible courage that I can't imagine I would have. They brought on a whole movement dedicated to women, and it still inspires people to this day.
In 1918, the Kingston Daily Freeman published a list of names of employees in the garment factories. That was the starting point for our work with Ann Mino's 7th and 8th grade class at Kingston Catholic School. We roped in the Ulster County archivist Taylor Bruck, and working together with those students, we researched using the census records and also historic newspapers. Who were these women? Where did they live? Did they live with parents? Did they live with a spouse and have children of their own? This was the basis for the rest of our work, and we found great stories of 9 girls and women ranging in age from 12 years old into their 30s.
I studied Olga Hardwick, and she was a young girl, and she started work when she was only 12 years old at the shirt factory.
And one of them happened to be my great-grandmother. I didn't do the project on her, but it was very interesting to learn about her and many of her co-workers at the time.
Nicole Foti, who is the fashion and merchandising teacher at Ulster BOCES, had already reached out to me to ask if her students could be involved. And when we realized we would be able to do an expanded student project, Nicole and I came up with a 3-part idea. First, we would work with history students to research the names of the former factory employees. Then we would work with a group of English students to imagine their lives, to write a fictional diary entry from the perspective of each one of these girls and women. And then Nicole's students would take all of that information, demographics from the census records, psychographics from imagining their lives, and the sewing students would produce garments or embellish garments to represent the individuality of these different girls and women.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity to give my students a chance to move beyond sentence structure and grammar and worrying about punctuation to just really live the writing that they're doing and to feel intensely for the women, the young women who lived here right in this area.
It had us use empathy, and we really were able to put ourselves in their shoes. I wrote about Helen Connor. She worked with her 2 sisters in the shirt factory, and she was married. Money was something that they would have clearly struggled with. So I wrote that she was unable to buy new shoes, so she keeps working. Maybe someday she'll have shoes that actually fit her.
Reading these factory workers' diary entries opened my eyes to see the workers as individuals instead of just bodies behind sewing machines.
What's great about this project is that it brings students into their local communities. So they're actually seeing the lives of these 9 women, getting to understand who they are, find ways that they can relate to them.
I had never thought about the local women who lived just in Kingston that also had an incredible role in this, and this project helped me realize it.
These settings were very close to where I live now, and so it's just kind of crazy to think about the many women working in these factories, you know, all around us. They were not like in distant lands, they were here.
Every year we do focus on fashion history as a unit, and we particularly look at the 20th century in detail. So that's looking all through the 1900s up through the early 2000s.
So much of this project was responding to evolving conditions throughout this school year. We brought Maria Cabrera, a local seamstress and mastered pattern maker, into the project when we realized that the sewing students would be remote and would not have access to the school's sewing machines during the spring.
While working on this project, I learned that the women in these factories were often put into groups with little area to express themselves.
If I were to sum up what I've learned to someone unfamiliar with the garment industry decades ago, I would tell them about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire and how many young immigrant women lost their lives due to the lack of safety precautions. Even though safety precautions were put in place, it was still a very hard job to work at. Despite this, the women persevered.
I think it's really important to explain how incredibly horrific these conditions were and how awful it was for these corporations to be doing that to women.
And it was very hot, and it was also very loud because of all the giant sewing machines in there all working at the same time together.
These women had challenging circumstances, but despite that, they were able to persevere and still shine through.
This project made me appreciate the roles women played in the fashion industry, and also benefited me by knowing that all dreams can be achieved no matter our gender.
To have the students in my class be able to think about how people 100 years ago felt is pretty incredible and pretty powerful. And I think students in my class and the women who worked at the Jacobson shirt factory have this firsthand experience of living during a pandemic as a young person. So that's a really special, incredible connection that I think they feel pretty intensely when they put themselves in the shoes of the young women 100 years ago.
Learning about this at least makes me want to learn more about where my clothing comes from. Make sure you're not getting it from anywhere that's being too horrible to their workers.
As we wrap up this project, I just am so grateful for my students and so proud of them, and they give me incredible hope for the future and for our world, to see how these teenagers have so much respect and care for people whose lives they know nothing about, and they have decided themselves that knowing where their clothing comes from is important to them. And I think I could not have taught that myself.
What I learned from this project is that students really value having options to be able to express themselves creatively. So what's great is that they had specific criteria to complete this project, but there was a lot of room for creative freedom where students could find multiple ways that they could represent their person's story through clothing and through design. It's been an absolute pleasure working with everyone and getting to be a part of this project, and I think that the students are going to value the experience of having been able to work with their local community and have something shared out that goes just beyond the walls of the classroom.
We're so proud of how stitched together turned out, of the many connections that this project made with students to each other, with students and their own local history, and with students and the connections to where their clothes are made today. We couldn't be prouder, and we couldn't be more invested in continuing our mission here at the Reher Center of bringing people together to preserve and present stories that matter to us all, whether it's about immigration, community, work, or bread. So thank you so much for learning about the project we did, Stitched Together, and we can't wait to welcome you back to tell even more stories of the garment industry in Kingston and the workers who've made this possible right here at the Reher Center Gallery.
I really like the final project and seeing everything together.
Yeah, I really like what they did here with all of the projects, and I was happy to be a part of it.
And I'm very glad that someone had the idea to bring both writing, drawing, and creating all together, and I think that makes a very good event.
I think that we did a great job, and then that when we passed it on to everyone else, they did a great job and they kept it going, and I learned a lot more that I couldn't find in my research because they went and found it other places that I didn't look.
I actually helped with the window display. I drew out what we could do, and then I actually came and volunteered for a day. It was cool to see it all come together.
It's so exciting. I've been very excited for this because I've only gotten to see my little project, which was so much fun doing, but I love to see the different schools, what they've done, and all the nice paragraphs next to the blouses, and it's very exciting to see the whole thing all together and finished.
I made a skirt for Cormet, France. It's really cool, and I've never done something where it's been on display or in the news. I have my own work and it's out front and center. So it was really special to me.